Hey, what's up, everyone? I hope you're all doing well, having a good day. Over the past couple of weeks, I've actually been working on a redesign for my Xbox Series X and S one-handed adapters. And now that I've got a final version, I just wanted to go ahead and kind of discuss some of the differences between version 1 and version 2 and do a full comprehensive guide showing all the features, what's the same on the adapters, what's different, and pretty much just how they work. Since releasing the version 1 adapters, I've actually gotten a lot of feedback from you guys, and I have a lot of personal experience playing with both adapters now. So my goal for the redesigns were to take some of the best features that version 1 had to offer, and then improve on some areas that could use a little upgrade as well. So with that being said, both adapters do share many features, but for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and break down some of the right and left-handed adapter specific features that I've upgraded since version 1. And we'll go ahead and start with the right-handed adapter here. So this is the version 1 right-handed Xbox adapter. And actually, this was the starting point for all the one-handed adapters that I offer now. So it was cool to revisit it and just breathe some new life into it. So this is version 1, and this is version 2. So as you can see, there's been quite a few changes made between version 1 and version 2. They're pretty much functionally the same, but there are a few key upgrades and just quality of life improvements between version 1 and version 2. So we'll go ahead and start with perhaps the most obvious one right here, and that is the solution for the D-pad. So version 1 relied on these 4 D-pad extenders, and these are basically just levers that attach to the left side of the adapter. Each one has this small protrusion sticking off of it, and that rests on its designated D-pad button, and it helps to activate the button when the end of the lever is pressed down upon by the right thumb. From top to bottom, they go in the order of up, right, left, and down, and each lever is a slightly different length than the others. This just helps to avoid accidentally pressing 2 buttons at the same time, and it also provides the user with a little bit of tactile feedback so that you can differentiate which button is which without having to look down at the controller. They did do what they were supposed to do for the most part, but since they don't retain the same layout as the D-pad, and instead they only go in 2 directions, up or down. So for example, if I wanted to click right, it would be 1 button down from up. And if I wanted to click left, that would be 1 button down from right. Or you could look at it like left is 1 button up from down. Hopefully that makes sense. It might be a little confusing, but either way, I just think that this D-pad solution wasn't as intuitive as it could have been. So I wanted to improve upon that with the version 2 adapter. So instead of relying upon button extenders, version 2 has this single D-pad extension, and it basically just mirrors the D-pad and brings it a little bit closer to the right thumb. Um, it functions pretty much the same as the D-pad, and it feels like a cross between an analog stick and one of those curved D-pads like the one you might find on the Elite controller. But most importantly, this new D-pad extender actually keeps the layout the same as the normal D-pad. And on top of that, you can also do partial inputs, like the diagonal directions, such as up and left, down and right, down and left. And that wasn't something that was really feasible on the version 1 adapter. I actually have yet to test this out with a fighting game, but I'm not sure how it's going to perform in there. I think it would probably still be best to use an analog stick, as you'll have more control over that. But I will say that the new D-pad extender does feel quite a bit more comfortable for menu navigation. Also, for those of you who use the version 1 adapter and just prefer to remove the D-pad extenders outright and use the D-pad like normal, where you just reach over from the right side of the controller with your thumb to access it like that, that's still an option with the version 2 adapter. This extension is fully removable, so if you want to use the D-pad as normal, that's also an option as well. Right now, I have the standard D-pad extender installed onto the controller, but this version does allow for a little bit more customizability in that department. It comes with 3 total D-pad extenders. The one that I have on here, like I mentioned, is the standard size. It's designed so that when you use the right analog stick, you should be able to pass your thumb underneath the D-pad extension. So it should sit high enough to where there's enough clearance for your thumb to pass under it when you're using the analog stick. If you have a larger thumb or you just want a little bit more clearance, there is another D-pad extension that sits a little bit taller than the standard one. So that's an option on there too. If you don't end up liking the contoured thumb grip on the D-pad extension, there's a third option that you can use, and that is a D-pad extension with just a ball end on it. Personally, I like to use the standard height D-pad extension with the contoured thumb grip, as I find it comfortable for menu navigation. But if I need to just quickly flick in a direction, like for calling in score streaks on Call of Duty, for example, that's where I find the one with the ball end to be pretty useful. Anyways, the new D-pad extension is the main upgraded feature of the right-handed Xbox adapter. So we'll go ahead and move on to the left-handed adapter here. This is version 1, and this is the version 2 adapter. Now the D-pad's already on the left side of the controller, so I've left that untouched. The main feature of this adapter is that it uses a series of button extenders to move the face buttons over from the right side of the controller to the left side of the controller and in easier reach of the left thumb. The order from left to right goes A, B, Y, and X, and the X button has this little protrusion to bring it just a tiny bit closer to the left thumb as it sits furthest away from all the other button extenders. Each button extender is staggered, not only in length but also in height, so that also helps to avoid accidental button presses as they are close together. So yeah, these button extenders are pretty much the main differentiating feature between the left-handed and the right-handed Xbox adapter. The right-handed one has the D-pad extender, and the left-handed one has the face button extenders. Now, these face button extenders were one of the features that worked really well on the version 1 left-handed adapter, so I haven't really changed much in regards to its design or layout on this version 2 adapter. But what has changed on the version 2 adapter, and this is the case for both of them, for both the left-handed and the right-handed versions, is that the adapter's body is just a slightly different shape than the version 1 adapter. And this just makes for a little bit of a better fitment on the controller, as well as a little bit of an easier install. So both version 1 adapters heavily relied on the use of clamping force to hold them onto the controller. It's sort of like how a rubber band works, and each adapter is made from PETG. So PETG is a pretty strong material, but it's also slightly flexible. And the way that this would work is that the version 1 adapters were just slightly more narrow than the controller itself. So upon install, the adapter would actually be slightly stretched over the controller body. And then once it was aligned at the top and the bottom, then the controller would snap into place into the adapter, and the adapter would hold onto the controller using its clamping force. Now, the advantage of using this clamping force was that it did hold the adapters very tightly to the controller, so there was no room for it to slide around or detach. But depending on your dexterity and hand strength, it could make the install process a little bit more challenging for some. Right, these are one-handed controller adapters, and my intention with these is that not only are they made to be used comfortably with one hand, but also to be installed and uninstalled with one hand. So for this version 2 adapter, that's something that I wanted to improve upon. These version 2 adapters do still rely on clamping force a little bit, but they are slightly wider than the version 1 counterparts. Instead of relying only on clamping force, they do have a better contour to the controller than the version 1 adapters do. So because this new body shape uses a combination of clamping force as well as improved controller contouring, it still does hold very tightly to the controller, so it won't slide around or detach during use, but it is a little bit easier to install and remove. If you want to see a step-by-step installation process for both of these controller adapters, I'll go ahead and put a link to that video in the description. It should pop up on your screen as well, so if you want to go ahead and check that out, just click the link on your screen. So at this point, all of the upgraded features of the version 2 adapters are shared between both the right and left-handed versions. So I'll go ahead and talk about both of them sort of at the same time here. Besides any challenges stemming from the installation, one of the biggest challenges posed when gaming with either version 1 adapter was the ability to activate both triggers at the same time. And this is important when you play first-person shooters like Call of Duty, where you need to both aim and shoot at the same time. And usually aim and shoot are designated to both triggers. This is the left-handed version 2 adapter, but on the version 1 adapters, since both triggers and both bumpers were intended to be controlled by one finger each, either by flicking up on the lever to activate either the trigger or the bumper on the opposite side of the controller, or by pushing down with that same finger to activate either the trigger or bumper on the same side of the controller that your hand is on. So for this left-handed version, you would flick up on this lever to hit RT, or with your index finger, you would flick up on this lever to hit RB, and then you would push down for LT and LB like this. But the challenge with this was activating both triggers at the same time, since you could really only either flick up or press down at the same time. So usually for any PlayStation or PC players, I would always recommend swapping one of your triggers with one of your bumpers, So if you were using a left-handed adapter, for example, I would usually recommend swapping the right trigger with the right bumper, or if you're on a right-handed adapter, doing the opposite and swapping the left trigger with the left bumper. So that way, aim could be on one of the bumpers and then shoot would be on one of the triggers, and it would look something like that. So on this left-handed adapter here, aim would be on RB, controlled by this lever, and shoot would be on LT, controlled by the left trigger. Now, if you're on Xbox console, though every button can be remapped to any other button, um, Microsoft unfortunately does not allow you to remap your triggers on a standard Xbox controller. I believe you need an Elite 2 controller to have that functionality. You can remap any button or bumper to any other button or bumper. You only cannot remap the triggers. I believe you can only swap them. So LT becomes RT or RT becomes LT. Now, on the version 1 adapters, I actually went through a few different trigger lever designs to help provide different ways where you could activate both triggers at once. And I do actually have a full video talking about this issue a little bit more in depth, not only on Xbox console, but also on PS5 and on PC. I also include some remapping options for your controller on PC. So if you want to check that video out, I'll go ahead and link it in the description. It should pop up on your screen here as well too. So if you want to check it out, just go ahead and click to that video. But with that being said, I've actually gone ahead and redesigned the trigger lever for both version 2 Xbox adapters, not only to address the issue of activating both triggers at the same time, but also to provide a little bit of customizability depending on your finger or hand size. Each adapter actually comes with 3 different sets of trigger and bumper levers. Each of them are a different size and they can be swapped out as needed or as preferred. Each trigger lever is labeled either as low, mid, or tall, and each bumper lever is labeled either with an L, an M, or a T, and that's all short for low, mid, or tall. And the label on each just refers to the height that the lever sits above either the trigger or the bumper. So for example, on this right-handed adapter, this is what the low height trigger lever looks like. And it just determines how much of a gap there is between the trigger and the lever. So that's pretty much how much space there is for my finger to fit between the two of those. So if you want a tighter fit for your finger between the lever and the trigger, then you might want to go with the lower trigger lever. If you want a little bit more travel distance, or you have a larger finger and you just want a little bit of extra space between the two, then go with the taller one. The height on each of these levers also determines how low the protrusion on the back of the trigger lever sits off the back of the controller. And this protrusion is designed so that both triggers can be activated at the same time. So this was the other part of the redesign for the trigger lever that I was talking about earlier. So though the methods to activate both triggers at the same time are the same for both adapters, it doesn't matter if it's right or left-handed. I'll go ahead and just show you how to do that on this right-handed adapter. One of the ways that you can do that is using this protrusion off the back of the LT lever here. All I did was shift my hand towards the back of the controller. So now my index finger sits between the lever for LT and the actual trigger of RT. And then I hang my middle finger off the back of the controller, sort of like this. And then when I want to activate both triggers, I just flick my middle finger up like this to activate LT, and then I can push down on RT to activate that. So activating both triggers would look something like this. The bumper lever also has a small protrusion on there. So if you want to activate both bumpers at the same time, then it's designed so that you can do that with the knuckle of your middle finger, sort of like that. So you can push up to activate LB and then push down with your index finger to activate RB. One of the other options, if you want to activate both triggers, if you don't want to use this protrusion off the back of the lever, is to use the crease right here on the actual trigger lever. And the way that you would do that is by having your hand set on the controller like so, and then you would fit your index finger into the crease of the lever there, and you can push up on the LT lever with your index finger like that, and then you can use your middle finger to press down on RT like that. So there's a few ways to do that. Now, just like in version 1 for both adapters, there's this little cradle here. I always referred to this as the joystick cradle, and that attaches to this extension that hangs off the side of the controller, which I've always referred to as the joystick arm. And it attaches via this linkage bar that clips the two together. This joystick arm has a textured pad on the end of that. It's designed so that it can rest on a textured surface, like a good desk mat, for example, and it rests on the desk and acts as a pivot point for the whole controller to be moved around. And then the analog stick can be activated by moving the controller around like this. This all pretty much functions the same as the version 1 adapters, but what's different on the version 2 adapters is the inclusion of a stick click pad, and that's attached to the joystick cradle now. So these stick click pads actually give your thumb something to press down on in order to click the analog stick without having to reach over to the other side of the controller to do that. So on the right-handed adapter, the stick click pad allows you to click the left stick down, and then on the left-handed adapter, it allows you to click your right stick down. Additionally, both stick click pads can also be used to control the analog stick. So if you don't need to use both sticks at the same time and you just prefer to do so using your thumb over the joystick arm, then that's an option as well. And lastly, these joystick cradles come with an optional locking mechanism that helps to hold the joystick cradle onto the analog stick when in use. This part is completely optional, and in most cases, it's actually unnecessary. Friction is typically enough to keep the joystick cradle held tightly into place. But if you have an older controller, or you've got a controller that you just really put through the ringer and the thumbsticks are super worn down, then this is an option to kind of help hold that cradle into place. Actually, on this Xbox controller, the left thumbstick is super worn down. So usually after a couple hours of use, I have to slide the cradle back into place. So instead of doing that, I've included this optional locking mechanism. So this pretty much just clips on if you want to use it, and it just holds the joystick cradle onto the analog stick. So yeah, that pretty much sums up the differences between the version 1 and version 2 adapters. Just like the version 1 adapters, the version 2 adapters are compatible with the joystick stabilizer bowls that I offer. So if you play on a slippery surface like a hardwood desk, for example, where the joystick arm slides around, or you just want a little bit more control over the movement of your analog stick, then these adapters are still compatible with the joystick stabilizer bowls. For those, I have the desk mounted stabilizer bowl, and that clips to the edge of any desk, no greater than 1 3/4 inches, and the leg stabilizer bowl, which has a Velcro strap to help keep it secured to your leg. And then typically with those, I use the armrest of my gaming chair to put my elbow on, and I let the joystick arm fall right into the stabilizer bowl strapped to my leg. So anyways, it's been a long couple of weeks going through the redesign process, but it's been very enjoyable, and I'm excited to announce the release. Um, these version 2 Xbox adapters are available on my eBay and Etsy sites, along with my PlayStation 5 left and right-handed adapters as well. So if you want to go ahead and grab one for yourself, check the link in the description. The link is also in my channel bio too, if you want to check that out there. So if you do end up ordering an adapter from me, I try to pre-assemble them as much as possible. So when you unbox your adapter, you should find one adapter main body with a joystick arm pre-installed on the side. Each one comes with a mid-height bumper lever and mid-height trigger lever pre-installed at the top. And then taped together with the joystick arm, you should find a joystick cradle with the linkage bar attached to that. And if you do get a left-handed adapter, you should find all 4 button extenders pre-installed onto the body for that. When you receive your adapter, all you'll need to do is install it on your controller, slide the joystick cradle onto the analog stick, and then clip the linkage bar from that to the joystick arm. On the side, you'll also get some spare parts with that, including a little baggie with 2 joystick cradle locking mechanisms. It'll also come with an extra joystick cradle with a stick click pad attached to that. You'll get an extra joystick linkage bar, and you'll also get a tall trigger lever, a low trigger lever, a tall bumper lever, and a low bumper lever as well. If you get a right-handed Xbox adapter, you should also find that there are 3 different D-pad extensions in the box. One will be the standard height, the other will be the tall height, and the last one will be the ball-ended D-pad extension. Optionally, each adapter can be bundled with a joystick stabilizer bowl, whether that be a leg-mounted one or desk-mounted one. You can choose to bundle that at checkout or just forego that if you don't even want to use it at all. I'm going to try to have some more right-handed Skyrim gameplay out this week, and hopefully some more left-handed Dark Souls 2 gameplay as well. I'm probably going to start playing Dying Light the Beast on a left-handed Xbox adapter. So if you guys are interested in watching that, then stay tuned for that. So yeah, it was good talking to you guys, and I appreciate you all for stopping by.